Hey, what's good, everyone? This is Mika, and you're watching Black Girl with Glasses on YouTube. Tonight, we're celebrating Black excellence once again with one of the dopest men I've ever met. He's a Harlem native who is an urbanist, activist, photographer, writer, African historian, and he's also been featured on MTV's The Talk, and now he's a project manager at the NYC Department of Housing, Preservation, and Development. Please give a warm welcome to Miles Gamble.
Hello, thank you so much.
What's going on? What's going on? Like, now it's good to see your face again.
Always good to see your face, Mika. You always look wonderful. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for obviously inviting me to the experience. I've always considered you to be a very erudite woman. Very dynamic woman, and I think you're very creative and really dope. I know I haven't seen you in almost 10 years, but following your web presence has been just great. And so, very appreciative.
Well, thanks, man. It's been an honor. It's very much an honor, to have you here and to have you in my life in general. I always follow you on Facebook, and you talk so much about politics and feminism, and you pretty much put people on blast, whenever they're doing something wrong, in the world. And I'm always following you on Facebook, no doubt. So speaking of that, I saw that you said that you were an urbanist.
Yes.
What exactly is an urbanist, and what does all that entail?
Okay, firstly, to call yourself an urbanist is sort of weird. It's a very complex kind of trope. So let me just mention it. It starts from urban studies. A man named Lewis Worth back in the 1940s, leading the Chicago school, was trying to figure out ways in which to make the city of Chicago better. They looked into issues such as urban revitalization or urban renewal at that time. They were looking at issues such as poverty, such as health and sanitation. And this school, which is basically a school of sociologists, were looking at ways to tackle issues that were social ills and issues that were confronting urban spaces, but they were looking to do it in a multitude of ways. Some quantitative, some qualitative, different kinds of surveys that they would do, and different other kinds of scientific properties that they would bring in order to study the human condition in urban spaces. Another one of those would actually be, you could add on to that, ethnographic research. And so from that, basically the Chicago school, you have this kind of studying urban spaces specifically, or studying the ecology of urban spaces. That became in itself a study that extended away from sociology, which sociology, obviously, you can study rural communities, you could study any other kind of community or society, but this was specifically, how do we examine the human condition in urban spaces? And if you do so professionally, then you are an urbanist. And, that's what I went to, that's what I got my master's in. That's what I write about. That's kind of primarily my concern as a thinker and as a writer. And, as a person who works, in city governance. So, yeah,
It seems like it's your life's blood, though. But because when I first met you at Brockport, at SUNY Brockport,
right.
you were basically always talking about how Black folks were treated in the world in that class. In fact, you, myself, and Christopher Lewis, we were basically to give you a bit of a background, y'all. We used to go to SUNY Brockport, and we were women and gender studies minors, all of us actually. Christopher Lewis, our guest, Miles, and myself. And we were the only three Black faces in that particular space. And sometimes it was extremely hard to be in that class at times, because it's you're in a sea of white faces, white feminists who have their own idea of what feminism is because of what they were taught and what we were being taught in that class. And I was wondering too, Miles, how are you able to take your feminist ideologies that you already had and incorporate them in the projects and the work that you're doing now?
Oh, okay. Well, firstly, it's always, I would always say I find it difficult to be able to like uh since feminism in itself should be just considered, I guess a common politic that we should all be able to have constructive discussions about, and because it really is a question of humanity and social justice, period. But I find it a lot that it's kind of speaking a different language, and that's the reason. And the reason why is because the American mainstream, I don't even know, like, have only until recently been confronting feminism I would say, in a meaningful way. And even that is problematic, right? Because you think about like Amy Schumer or Lena Dunham, if those are the if those are the spokeswomen for feminism,
Word.
you struggle for credibility already. However, historically, feminism has always been seen as a contentious issue. This goes even back as far as women's suffrage, and the reason why is because those conversations have always, no one has ever examined the definition of feminism in itself. Nobody ever really, cared about, Seneca Falls. Nobody, I don't know if they ever read the charter or the bylines. So people commonly think that feminism is just this construct that's created by lesbians in which men are superfluous. That couldn't be further from the truth, but everybody buys that. You have 1,000 women right now who you can be like, hey, you a feminist? And they'd be like, no, I'm not a feminist. And you're just like, what? Wait, but why? You know what I mean? And, obviously the question for men, would be you get the same answer, only nastier. And the reason why is because I don't think anybody has a functioning, nobody has a functional definition of what it really means. And that's basically, creating, an equitable society based upon choice, based upon civil liberties, based upon political, economic, and economic, religious, anything you could deal with, sovereignty, and decision making. And so, in the work that I do, I'm always, in the work that I do, which basically I deal with, extending affordable housing to the folks of the city of New York. At the center of that, a lot of that has to deal with social justice, especially for women, with children, women who are homeless, women who are, I would say, like, vulnerable, in certain spaces where, there's cases of domestic violence, cases of lack of social services for women. But more than that, putting myself around feminist thinkers and making sure that I read as much as I can I would say on a daily basis, or as often as possible. I think that had like, I guess, affected my mind in a certain way, because when we went to Brockport, my concern, first of all, was finding myself, or finding my true African self, through, rote and scholarship. And that's exactly what I was doing. But I found that there was a significant overlap in the struggles that, women globally were dealing with just as much as, African Americans would deal with. And especially when you talk about Black women, we're talking about, literally, maybe in the last 2 years, we're talking about, like, I would say, Black women actually being able to have some type of control of their own narrative in a very meaningful and popularized way. Black Girl Magic, and the Black Lives Matter movement, which was started by 3 Black women, even as something as lighthearted as, like, Issa Rae, or Shondaland. So I think, like, it is challenging in order to keep that type of spirit alive in you. But when I got my minor in women's studies, it clicked for me then, and I'm so grateful for that, because, like, it could have gone either way. And so I'm glad that I know as much as I do know, but I always want to know more. And so that's why I put myself around the likes of you and a lot of other astute women who are versed in it, and some men. So
it seems like just based on what you were saying, like, a lot of your work is intersectional. Mm-hmm. Extremely intersectional. Like, you don't compartmentalize anything. As far as your ideologies on feminism, that everything works together and everything is interdependent as far as the forms of oppression and the things that we go through, regardless of your identity or your sexual orientation.
That's right.
Right.
Patricia Hill Collins wrote about that. And this is like where this is what kind of throws me. Like, Patricia Hill Collins wrote about this, like, I would say perhaps one of the, perhaps one of the most comprehensive, like, I guess, readings I've ever read on intersectionality came from, her expounding upon what she dubbed to be the matrix of domination. Now, I think that the matrix of domination is something that is literally, it's so essential, which is why I do believe like this whole concept, that she was delving into is somewhat of genius. Not to say that other, scholars before her hadn't looked at intersectionality, but she was the one who literally said that it is possible that, yes, even an oppressed person has the capacity to oppress others. In a matrix of domination, you must always consider intersectionalities because no one thing is the same. So whenever you deal with social sciences, you have to figure it out. You have to look at it in the way that society is tempered by difference. The problem is that we are all concerned with power. And that is the one common thing. However, in this struggle for power, when you can't put it on a straight continuum a lot. Maybe you can as a historian, but if you really want to study the human condition, you must look at all kinds of oppression. You must look at all kinds of struggle. You must look at all kinds of resistance. And so when thinking about the matrix of domination, I'll tell you right now, the film that came out, Birth of a Nation and stuff like that, which is a really, really, really cool film and stuff like that. I didn't watch it personally. Because the director, I don't need to name any names, obviously had a prior case of sexual assault, which the evidence was pretty damning and his involvement or cooperation with it. I don't care if you tell me whether or not a person actually themselves raped a girl or orchestrated the rape of a girl. Like, that's just not something I'm dealing with. But him being a black man actually delivering a story on a prominent black hero, a person who deserved shine for all of these years, he himself may have been implicated in abusing women. A black man who obviously we have no more control of our bodies than so many other people. If you look at, the routine and sustained assault on the black male body by the state, we have no more control on that, but we still have the capacity to oppress others, and that's something that doesn't leave my mind. I have to figure out, and that's something I have to figure out, something I have to think about. That's something that everybody's challenged to think about. The intersectionalities is what really matters. That's what, honestly, as a nerd, makes things fun. But obviously, it makes you hella cynical too. So.
Yeah, now that actually leads to my next question about black male feminists. You're actually the first one I've met. And as far as I know, you're one of the few male black feminists who are basically legitimate and consistent in regards to your political ideologies and your theories. Unfortunately, though, there's been an influx of black men who've used the label feminist to manipulate or target or sexually assault women in the radical community, especially black women in the radical community. Right. What do you do to differentiate yourself from those who use feminism to traumatize others?
Now, and this is something that's complicated when we talk about intersectionality. And any black man who's truly interested in social justice, or who's interested in any kind of social activism, political activism, economic justice, environmental justice, we need to understand that, especially in the black experience, black women have always laid at the center of our struggle. However, when it comes to the question of differentiation, this is literally something that I get kind of ticklish about, because there's not much of a difference between Miles or the average black man, if you want to say average black man. The question is if I am interested in social justice, freedom for all, when am I going mirror shopping is the next question I should ask myself. I need to look at myself in the mirror, and I truly believe, even myself, that I and so many other black men are in many ways recovering misogynists. Now, when I say recovering misogynist, I mean this very serious. Like, when you recover from alcoholism, my family has had, my forefathers, a lot of them have had issues with alcoholism for generations. There's no way when you walk into these AA meetings to be rehabilitated that you have to first admit that you have a problem. And if you do not do so, then you are lying to yourself. So I do understand the functions of me as a Black thinker, as a Black man. But I also do understand that the way I was raised, what I grew up believing to be real, I was practically raised in the church. What I thought was acceptable from my uncles, my cousins, older people, what they used to tell me about women, what I was taught about the opposite sex. Yes, they were training me to be a misogynist, and I don't think that that's entirely. I can't say it's entirely their fault. Some people are basically given like, you know, the structures, you know, it really affects the way a person thinks and the way people are indoctrinated. I would say I'm a recovering misogynist. There's a lot of things that, you know, a lot of assumptions that need to be challenged on a daily basis. I constantly challenge myself on a daily basis not to have certain assumptions or impulses, or it can be even as simple as like not liking the latest ghetto fight on Facebook. People love to show the fights between Black women in McDonald's in Brownsville, Brooklyn. And that's a function of misogyny. That's a function of misogyny. So like, you know what I mean? Like, and you know, you may want to watch it and stuff like that. You know, you'd be like, oh man, dude, yeah, you know, she knows how to fight and stuff like that. But then you're really thinking, wow, man, this oppresses women. Or, you know, this is really like, you know, violence upon, you know, Black female bodies I should not be comfortable with this. But see, only if a person is truly interested in changing it, do they admit that themselves, that first of all, they may have been enticed by it, they may have been attracted to it, or they may walk around with those same assumptions about their own people, about the women that they interact with on a daily basis. So I feel like the only difference I would say between me and them is just the fact that I'm able to admit that there's a problem, and I'm willing to work to undo any kind of implicit or inadvertent damage that I have caused in all of my like growing up, maturating within, you know, this system. But you know, like it's a thin line. You know, I could have easily, you know, been like a jerk off, but you know, you know, like I want to do better. I want to be better, and I also want to let, you know, other fellas know that, yo, man, like, just admit that you have this issue. You know, this pervades our culture. We can work on it together.
Right, and to tell you to as far as like the videos and things of that nature, like even people in the radical community have a problematic fave, or they watch those type of videos or whatever, especially when it has something to do with white supremacy or someone white being beaten up or whatnot, because I feel that, yes, people visit hiphopstar.com for that type of things, or media takeout for that type of things, because it's mere entertainment. But I also feel too that a lot of those videos, especially when it comes to white people being beaten up, it's a sense of power. Like,
yeah,
like you see what I'm saying? Like, like they're going after someone who called them the N-word, or they're going after someone.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's like we justify it. We're almost desensitized in a sense, if that makes any sense.
No, yeah, absolutely. We see, so, and this is what complicates things, because a lot of Blacks, we don't like, we didn't ask to be born within a certain crucible. A lot of times, many of us have become like so familiarized with violence at such an early age that in order to hide or repress that trauma, we actually laugh about it more so than anything. If you ever think about you ever getting a whipping when you was growing up and stuff like that, we laugh at that now, not realizing that we may have been truly afraid of, you know, for our lives whenever, you know, our parents or grandparents got a Hot Wheels racetrack or a switch from the tree. Like, we laugh about that now because at such an early age, we have been so confronted by violence that, like, now when we see something, it doesn't affect us in the same way. But we've also seen violence of the state that's been put upon us. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we've seen our neighbors get perhaps roughed up by a cop, beaten up by somebody, killed by a rival gang member. You know what I mean? Innocent bystanders. We've seen instances of child abuse. Like, we really have seen a lot. A lot of Black people, unfortunately, are very like, you know, we're all too familiar with some of these stories. And in order to show the one thing that, you know, America all agrees with, and is that, you know, we're a very violent people who know how to fight well. When it comes up to like that kind of video, you know, I mean, people are into that type of like, common image of like revenge, or, you know, people look into, you know, people think that that's something that's entertaining, not understanding that our acceptance of violence makes it all the more normal. Like, what is the difference between, like, you know, watching those kind of fight videos and then watching a video of a person, an unarmed civilian, getting killed? You know, there's not much of a difference between Sharkeisha getting punched in the face, you know, obviously in the famous video, and Oscar Grant getting shot, you know, in Fruitvale Station. I think we need to, again, with intersectionality, we need to understand that, you know, the more that we accept violence, either Blacks being the cause of violence or violence being done to us, we are actually accepting wholesale a pathology or an image of us that people believe is true, and that even Blacks believe is true.
So speaking of which, many Black men in particular argue that feminism is not for real men, or that it's a white folks problem or ideology that's actually detrimental to Black families, like that whole Hotep type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yep. First of all, when we're approaching this, we are approaching Hotepville right now with what you're saying.
What
we are approaching is Hotep land, Hotepville, Hoteptopia. I think that when we talk about this, we got to understand, first of all, and this is what's crazy to me, and I'm so glad you brought this up. I didn't mean to cut you off, but the antecedents of Hotep is actually, it's actually, by definition, it means to be blessed by God, a boon from a higher power. It also means the bringer of peace. Precisely. If we look at the pre-dynastic dynasty, or Imhotep himself, the one in the third dynasty, which is around 2000 BC in Egypt, he was a consummate practitioner of all things. Like, so pretty much he was a physician. He was a political strategist. He was also a leading engineer and architect. If we just looking at Imhotep, obviously there's a lot of different Hoteps through various kingdoms in various dynasties in Egypt's history, but just focusing on Imhotep, like, he sounds like a pretty dynamic and cool guy. And somehow people's mistaken understanding of history, of Egyptology, of even basic African history gets so distorted that it meets the political ends to a few. And the unfortunate part about that is that you have a lot of these revisionist historians. Now, I don't have a problem with revisionism in itself, because there's a lot of things in history that were ripped out by white folks, right? However, there are some people who take this, or take one particular concept about the Black man and his former greatness, and then they use it with the same patriarchal models that are used in Eurocentric narratives, which is stupid to me, because we're talking, like, when we talk about Hoteps, their basic idea and plan is that still the man is in control. They say that the woman has a particular place, and then they elect themselves, give themselves agency to tell the Black woman her place, which plays out in an assortment of unbelievably stupid and foolish misnomers, such as you will have one Hotep who says, "Oh, well, you know, I want my queens to be smart, because all these thoughts out here, they're stupid." Then you have the other Hotep that says, "Nah, I don't like when these Black women go out here getting master's degrees, because they're too smart. They think that they're trying to be better than the man. No, we don't want that." Then you have the other one who's like, you have the other Hotep, "I want my woman in the kitchen. She's supposed to be home, raising a family, cultivating civilization. That's your greatest greatness, sister." And then you have the other one that says, "I don't mess with no girls who are only living off of a brother. All you doing is bringing me down. Why are you living in the house? Why aren't you working?" And, you know, they all seem to have this, like, beautiful caption meme, you know what I mean? And they all have something that they have an expectation of a woman. They get a gazillion likes of it from all these ahistorical, anti-intellectual dopes who are online looking for a reason to blame Black women for their problems. Listen, we need to understand this now. For all Hoteps who are listening or in attendance, there's one question that you have to ask yourself. Are you truly invested in social justice for all, or are you looking for privilege? that is a difference. That is a marked difference, because you cannot just lead with a narrative saying, I'm in control, I want this, and I want to be free as well, and get me from under the thumb of white supremacists, when you in yourself practice regularly a common hatred for Black women, and you speak of them with the same vitriol at times as you do your white oppressors. So that doesn't make it like, it's either you want privilege or you're gonna want equity, or you want equality. Like, which one do you want? Because you can't just, and this also is another argument when speaking on all Black lives mattering, right? So a lot of times, people, when we talk Black Lives Matter, obviously, myself, Antoinette Gregg, also, she does great organizer. Now she's based in Charleston. The concern is, like, yes, we understand, activists do understand Black Lives Matter. However, we have to talk about Black lives being an all-encompassing construct. And I'm glad that this is coming into the conversation now, because people like Antoinette were talking about this for a long, long time, whatever. She's really cool. And the question is like, we're talking about our LGBT brothers and sisters. What about all the trans brothers and sisters who get killed by police routinely? And I'm talking about, like, they get killed by police a lot. I don't have a number or a figure, but it's great. We're not marching for them, you see? And so, like, even thinking about the way we look at social movements, are we looking for finding the voice for a privileged few? And is this just, a time in which Black men once again try to center social movements around themselves? We saw this before. I love the civil rights movement. What I don't love is the fact that in the civil rights movement, a lot of black feminists, a lot of even like gay radicals, like, and historians, and a lot of other people were kind of muted throughout that entire thing. Like, we think about Bayard Rustin, like, what I mean? Bayard Rustin, ex-communist, openly gay. How do we deal with him? Even now, we don't know we don't know the language. We don't even know the language of even dealing with that person, or the fact that his conversations with MLK was one of the things that sparked the March on Washington. Mm-hmm. Looking at James Baldwin, it took us now where you have like a string of articles that come together that says, well, James Baldwin may have been right about a few things. Schools just now are starting to put him in regular rotation in high school curriculums and English literature classes. What were we missing then? Because what are we missing then? We need to encompass all Black lives into the conversation. And I hate saying all Black lives matter, because I don't even want to give any credence to those all lives idiots who basically do no footwork, and they think of their battlefield being a keyboard when it's way more serious for that. I just want Black Lives Matter to be expanded on. This ideology, this movement that we're using, unlike before, needs to be all-encompassing, because after all, it was made by three Black women, and I believe one or two of them are lesbian identified. That's important. You can't just sweep that under the rug. That's not an inconsequential thing. That comes with a set of political consequences as well. And so, I know I got off the topic, but any hoteps, please save yourself, man, or just talk to somebody, or just read something that may make you feel uncomfortable. But until that point, until you have an established record of what you know, and you're able to like back that up with detail and research, stop posting shit online, man. Don't do that. It is dangerous to give wrong information to an oppressed people. Okay, it is wrong to do that. Like, you are not helping.
Right. So it's like, and it actually answered the second part of my question for that. Like, I was going to ask you, like, how do you respond, or if someone were to question your Blackness? And it seems like a lot of hoteps or anyone who has that patriarchal mentality, they basically do want privilege when they are telling Black women that we don't have a place, or people who are gender non-conforming, or members of the LGBT IQA community, they don't have a space. And I've noticed that in a lot of these big movements, men they try to dominate, and they have like, they're the ones who have all these voices, when in actuality it is women, or gender non-conforming people who put their bodies and put their safety and their lives on the line just so we can all be free. And whenever there is, it just seems to me like whenever there is a movement of some sort and men are in trouble in some way, shape, or form, we are like, women are always the first one to defend Black men. But they don't do that. Like, I found that they don't do the same for us, but they'll be the first one to say that we don't do anything.
Right,
precisely. Like, and this where, is why, like, seriously, like, where are y'all getting this from? Like, seriously.
It's a self-defeating, like, it's a self-defeating, like, you know, political stance at the end of the day. So you cannot, and we need to get to the point where we, like, and I think that some of us are understanding this, that you cannot control the narrative or the story or the imagination of anyone else. Anyone else, you can't do it. You know, we are not a monolithic group of people. Blacks coming together is a hard job because we're not a monolithic group of people. We all have differences in opinion, different mind states. We all have different affiliations. We all have different identities. However, I think historically, some of us have leaned, some prominent activists have leaned on the traditions of social movements. And that's basically like, you know, having Black women do the work in silence and having Black men take credit for it. Mm-hmm. This is no different because this has become a fixture of our communities. If you think about the Black church, Michael Eric Dyson called once ecclesiastical apartheid. And the fact that so many, 80% of, like, you know, think of the deacons, the usher board, the treasury, are just Black women, but none of them could really get up to the pulpit to speak to the congregation. None of them are the bishops, you know, none of them are in any of those big decision-making roles, even in the church. You think about the church as a socializing agent. For most of us, the church was our local institution for everything. That means food, spiritual enrichment, song, dance, writing, scholarships, all of that stuff. So even if you think about that, we're talking about a tradition in which we want, and even Black women, they really want Black men to be great, to look great, and to look good, but it's for the wrong reasons. It's because we are so attracted to that look that Europeans have had, or that look that we've seen white Americans have in social activism or otherwise, where, you know, the white man is kind of like the one is in control, he's the boss, and the white woman acquiesces and stuff like that. I'm trying to explain to people that almost never existed for Black men. We don't, like, in America, as far as like America's concerned, we didn't have that luxury. A lot of times, like, when Black women had to work, they were domestic servants. We had to work, we were domestic servants. We were both in the field during slavery. So, like, we don't have that luxury to play this, like, privilege game. Black men need to understand that we are from a radical tradition. And who better to do things differently than Black people? So I feel like we need to cut out that kind of like approach to social activism by basically, you know, always centering it around men or their objectives, and allow some other people to take the mic. You know, some other Black people to take the mic.
All right, so according to Zoom, we only have 9 minutes left, so we just have to, like, keep going.
Crazy. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, so you like studied at the University of Ghana. I'm really interested to know, like, how was that experience for you?
Wow. Okay. So at the University of Ghana, like, I think this is the time in which I came alive as an intellectual. I would say, like, as an African intellectual, as a person who started to consider themselves being a person who wasn't just, you know, Black Americans. James Baldwin said, we are Americans, but we're not like, I'm American. We're born within a certain crucible. We grew up in a certain way. So, like, my point of reference is streets of Harlem. My point of reference of, you know, foods I like, you know, are pretty much things that, you know, were taken from, or what I thought was taken from Mississippi, what I thought was taken from my grandmother and my great-grandmothers. And it stopped right there because my lineage, as James Baldwin would say, is a bill of sale. So to actually physically go back to Africa, to reach into the mother soil and it started to get me to think more it started to get me to think more, you know, of my place in the world, you know, rather than just being constrained to the streets of New York, the streets of Harlem, or my mom being from Mississippi, my grandmother being from New Orleans, my family in South Carolina, Virginia, and stuff like that. I'm starting to think, wow, man, you know what? Like, we may have been from Ghana. We may have been sold from the Elmina slave castle, and that means a lot to me. So coming alive as an intellectual is coming together, bringing yourself together, you know, the identity that you were born with and the one that you created, you know, when you really figured out what the world was. And I think that happened when I was in West Africa. In Ghana, I got to travel around. I got to talk to politicians. I got to talk to people of all different kind of religions. I got to talk to, you know, Angolans who were there since their revolution. I got to talk to some refugees from Liberia. And it was just a for real experience, man. Like, you know, but it got me thinking that, you know what, you know, I like writing. I like to, you know, I like studying social issues. I like studying, you know, urban sociology. Going to Ghana, you know, they have, you know, a lot of issues. Ghana is a very friendly place, very kind folks, but they have a lot of social issues that, you know, like they have anywhere else, dealing with their struggle, living under a British crucible for so long, living under, you know, a Dutch crucible for so long, and Portuguese crucible from all, you know, being a colony for so long. But I really came alive as an intellectual out there. That's what I truly believe. So if you ask me, when did Miles become like smart? That's what I would be like, yeah, it's when I went to Africa when I was, you know, like 21. So yeah.
Now, so like, I'm assuming that your position, so we're going to like switch it up a bit. I would like to like talk about your art. I was wondering, we talked about your activism, your career. I mentioned to the audience that you work for the city, but you're also a photographer and writer. So I'm wondering, like, who and what inspired you to pick up the camera or pick up the pen? And is this something that you do for fun, or is this also a part of your activism?
Actually, see, the thing about art and the thing about photography is that it gives the creator the independence in order to be able to tell their own story. And that in itself is a form of social activism, because that's self-expression. And giving self-expression provides agency to a person, you know, who otherwise wouldn't have had it. It gives them that kind of outlet. And that's what, you know, I think when I was a kid, like, you know, I may have picked up photography in high school. There are a lot of people who I have in my life and stuff like that, people who I grew up with. Alexandra Silversmith, who I do a lot of my photo and film projects, her and her little sister, Chloe Silversmith, they were just like, you know, very instrumental in the way that I use the camera and have used the camera for the past 5 to 6 years. But really the inspiration comes from like Gordon Parks. Inspiration comes from like watching documentaries and being like, you know what, I could do that. You know, I grew up being a film buff. And so like, I was like, I want to be able to use the camera in a multitude of ways, a litany of ways. So I want to use the camera to address social issues. I did like, you know, I did a documentary, Why We Are Shot, talking about gun control in America. And then I'll say, you know what, let me switch it up. Let me do a film about me dancing inside of a subway station in Berlin. You know, I'll do the same thing. You know, I'll do whatever I want to do in order to convey a message that I want. On the writing front, I actually did I did a cool collaboration with a Harlem-based curator, Lady Sasha Jones, on I did on like a blog that I barely ever like update called Reblack, and we just wrote about the top 10 ways in which Blacks can be able to take care of themselves and remain unapologetically Black. So you may see something like that from me. I may then write an opinion piece on the significance of celebrating Kwanzaa, which I hope you do. And I hope every Black person does. And I write about why, you know what I mean? But it just really, like, I take inspiration as it comes to me, you know? And like, I think like being creative is really just having the courage to say, you know what, I could be able to do that. I may suck at it, but I'm going to keep doing it because one time is going to hit. And when it hits, everybody's going to be so happy and it's going to be so lit and everybody's gonna love me. And so like that's what wills me to like keep doing these things. But inspiration is something that's like perpetual. This conversation I'm having with you, I'm gonna grow from it, and I'm gonna go and like, you know, go out and shoot something else, and, you know, take photos and stuff like that. So
All right. Well, real quick, I also love your fashion because I noticed that you like but like real quick, where do you shop? Because I really do love your clothes, for real.
oh my God, bless you so much, Mika. Oh man.
For
Well,
real, like seriously.
you
I'm
know,
just like
I'm not, you know, I'm okay. I don't really try to wear clothes really nice. You know, I try, you know, I'm working on it. You know, I'm trying to look cool. But all right, I go shopping like, you know, you may see me in a place like, you may see me in Banana Republic. You may see me like, man, you may see me in like, yeah, I would say like Banana Republic, Zara, you know, places that, you know, you could sometimes find them to be affordable, sometimes not. And then you find me in like thrift stores. I go to thrift stores a lot in Western New York, throughout the Rust Belt, Cleveland, Baltimore. Once a year, you'll see me going there rummaging through a bin. You're like, wait, that's Miles, you know, and that's how I do it. You know, I love my tailors because my tailors in Central Harlem, anything I wear and stuff like that, I have a kind of weird shaped body. They're able to make it fit. And so, yeah, it's a bit of everywhere.
yeah, I'm just saying and letting everyone know that he has videos on top of videos, like pictures of him like in suits and like bags, and I'm like, and he's like a black man, like fashion model, like all this type of stuff, right? And so, and his clothes are sharp, like he is looking sharp, right? It's like a cross between Bayard Rustin and James Baldwin. Now is you like for real?
I'm honored by that. Wow, I'm honored by that, truly. I'm trying, you know. I think fashion is just another way, you know, that people are able to express themselves. It's an extension of my political autonomy. And, you know, dandyism has always been a part of Black self-love. And so, you know, I'm just in that tradition. I'm Harlem up for real. Very Harlem in that aspect.
All right, so now that we're out of time, thank you so much for joining me, Miles.
Yes.
Real quick, if you like this episode, subscribe to the Black Girl with Glasses channel on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and WordPress. You can also find those links in the description. So until next Monday, peace.